Now, to me, I'll be honest, it's a bit of a surprise that Duke Johnson is still even on the Cleveland Browns. I thought that the Browns would make a trade relatively quickly after the whole OTA fiasco, but that hasn't happened. And as training camp gets closer and closer, it seems more certain that Duke Johnson might still be on the Browns roster as camp opens. And there are just a few things that I am seeing that makes me think that this Duke Johnson situation can get very, very messy. And here's why. Now, the Duke Johnson situation is one that's probably got more publicity than it should have. I've seen this thing covered on SportsCenter, which is a surprise to me because before the Browns acquired all the talent, Duke Johnson wasn't somebody that was talked about in the media, but now it has become a point of contention and something to behold, partly due to some of the Browns players, partly due to some of the team's comments, and partly due to Duke's comments himself about the entire situation. But all of this has wrapped itself into a package that can become extremely volatile if the Browns don't get rid of him before camp starts. Now, before we jump into why that might be, let's first talk about why the Browns are still keeping him around in the first place. And that is because the Browns aren't convinced they don't need Kareem Hunt insurance. Now, what I mean by Kareem Hunt insurance is that Kareem Hunt is suspended for 8 games, and Duke Johnson would obviously be able to play those 8 games Kareem Hunt is suspended. But the other part of Kareem Hunt insurance is we don't know if Kareem Hunt is going to even be able to play football this year if he gets through his 8-game suspension clean and able to play at the end of that suspension. We are guessing, we are hoping, we are kind of expecting that, but when there's suspensions of this nature, you can never just write it down and depend on that. And that's why Duke Johnson is still here. This isn't about the 8 games before Kareem Hunt can come back. This is more about the situation if Kareem Hunt can't come back. And unfortunately, as time has went on, there have been some flags that have popped up about Kareem Hunt that I would assume make the Browns a little bit wary of just getting rid of Duke Johnson. Now, a disclaimer, Kareem Hunt in the recent incident, if you would even call it that, he got in an argument at Barley House with one of his friends that got physical enough to where they had to be taken outside. While that in itself is not a crime, while that's not a violation, while that's not anything outside the ordinary of a regular Saturday night on West 6 in Cleveland, it is still of note that Kareem Hunt might still be associating with the same people that got him and helped put him in situations that put him in Cleveland and got him released from the Kansas City Chiefs. If you look into a lot of the things that the Kansas City Chiefs media and team was worried about with Kareem Hunt was his inner circle. They did not want him going back to Cleveland and hanging out with his friends because they felt like those people were trouble in his life. And while I have no idea what the situation is in reality with Kareem Hunt, if that concern is there and he's here and he's having similar things kind of flare up with his inner circle, getting into an argument with somebody, then that is a cause for concern. That is a flag. That is something to look at. It is not something to condemn him. And Kareem Hunt has all the right in the world to be able to go to a bar if he wants to. I know in my personal experiences with 2 players, now Kareem Hunt is not these 2 players, Johnny Manziel and Josh Gordon, where I dismissed them partying or I dismissed that and told people to get off their backs. I ignored those signs, and those ended up being clues to a much bigger picture. So I would urge fans not to ignore this. You don't have to give this all the weight in the world. This is significant that he's already having these headlines pop up with him. So I don't think it's nothing. And then you have to remember that Kareem Hunt is on a 0 tolerance policy with the Browns. And what I assume this means is that if he has any violent outbreak outside of football, then he will be promptly released by the Cleveland Browns. Now, John Dorsey knows this is a policy he imposed on Kareem Hunt. He knows better than anybody how good he feels about Kareem Hunt's ability to get through the next season without having one of these outbreaks. And if you're John Dorsey, I can understand why giving up Duke Johnson for something less than his value would not really be desirable, especially when you know Kareem Hunt's on a zero tolerance policy. And again, Kareem Hunt can go out if he wants to, but I would say if you know you're on a zero tolerance policy, I don't think it's the smartest idea to do anything that would raise the percentage of you getting involved in some kind of violent altercation. And while plenty of people go out on less 6 and don't get in a fight, I just question whether doing all that is a worthwhile risk for a player on a zero tolerance policy. And that makes me question some of his decision making if he feels like it is. So that's where I would be worried with Kareem Hunt. And that's where I think the Browns are a little bit worried about Kareem Hunt and why they're so unwilling to give up Duke Johnson. But here's why this situation has the potential to get really, really messy. Now, the news came out that Duke Johnson changed agents, and that's significant because he changed agents to Drew Rosenhaus. And anybody who follows football hardcore, anybody who knows anything about contract negotiations knows that Drew Rosenhaus is who you hire when you need something to get done now. And this signals from Duke Johnson's camp that this may not go as smoothly as we predicted. I don't think he's planning on submitting quietly. I don't think this is something that is just going to go away and disappear during training camp, because hiring Drew Rosenhaus is not what you do when you want something to stay quiet and out of the way. So this signals that I think Duke Johnson is ready to kind of dig in here and really put the Browns in a position to give him what he wants, which is obviously either a release or a trade so he can find a better situation for himself. And let's remember that the Duke Johnson situation is also not solely about playing time. Duke Johnson is also upset with the organization and doesn't feel like he can trust the organization. That being the nature of the trade request, it feeling a little bit personal to the player allows this to get a little bit more messy for the front office than it would normally if this was just a contract dispute or a playing time dispute. Now, the other reason that this could become a huge story is that this story has the potential to just not die. And as silly as a Duke Johnson contract trade situation, a third string running back story sounds like it can't die, I think this really has the potential because of the surroundings of it. First of all, the Browns are going to be one of the most covered teams, one of the most scrutinized teams in the NFL. So there is already going to be a lot of media coverage around the team. Now, during the first week of training camp, as we all know, there's really not a lot of news that pops up. So a Duke Johnson holdout would be a juicy piece of media for all of the people who are covering the Browns to chew on. And then you have the unusual nature of the trade demand. This is a NBA style trade demand from a player in the NFL and a player who is not a star player or really has a huge role on the roster. That being the case, I think it's going to add even more fuel to the fire. And also, you have to keep in mind that Freddie Kitchens and Baker Mayfield are both the leaders of this team. They're the voices of this team. And while there is a lot to love about Freddie and Baker, in a situation like this, their honest approach about how they go about things could inadvertently throw a lot more gas on the fire. And if you need an example of this, look no further than what happened in OTAs, where Baker just gave an honest answer about a player that voiced that he didn't want to be there. It became a 2-3 week long story, and with all of the attention in training camp, I think a comment here or there or something, it can be blown out of proportion very easily, because one, Baker is somebody that the media really gravitates to and the media loves to talk about, and he's also Baker Mayfield, which, from what we know of him, he's probably going to say something controversial because that's just who he is. He's going to be honest. He's going to be himself. So that is also going to add fuel to a story. Again, a story about a third string running back. And again, I have said third string running back at least 4 times in this video because it needs to be made clear. I understand that the Browns want Kareem Hunt insurance, but Kareem Hunt insurance is not Duke Johnson. It's Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is Kareem Hunt insurance. Nick Chubb is the feature back of this system, and Nick Chubb is who you should rely on, not a guy who's been suspended for 8 games and you don't know if he's going to be able to maintain his playing ability, 1, when he gets back from suspension, and 2, if he's going to be able to stay on a good enough path to get out of an 8-game suspension clean. So why everything about Kareem Hunt is being put on Duke Johnson's shoulder, I don't understand that. When it should be on Nick Chubb's shoulders, because Nick Chubb is the one guy that's reliable. You drafted him. And again, all this talk is about a guy who is a third string running back, a guy who probably accounted for like 5% of the offense last year as a backup running back, if he even accounted for that much, and who projects to account for much less this season. If you're Duke Johnson, I understand why you want to go. I'm not going to go against a player in that way. And if he wants to go out kicking and screaming, that's what he's going to do. If you're the Browns and you've looked at all this and you allow this to go into training camp and become a big deal, then it's kind of your fault, because you held on to somebody who is a third string running back to get more value, when the value proposition for Duke Johnson was never really that high to begin with. It was at best going to be a fifth. So if you get a sixth or a seventh, that's just what you're going to get with Duke Johnson. He's a third string running back. Running backs are the most disposable position on the team. And in enduring this much controversy and enduring as much drama that could happen because of the Duke Johnson situation getting out of hand, and again, Duke Johnson hiring Drew Rosenhaus sounds like that's what he's planning to do. And if you let a contract holdout become a big deal from a third string running back, and again, hiring Drew Rosenhaus, this is pure speculation, but that's what it seems like is in the cards for Duke Johnson. He's going to make this just a little bit harder on the Browns to make sure that he is not traded in the middle of the season. And if you allow a situation like that to get out of hand for a player who's not worth all the drama and whose value is not greater than what the drama is going to bring to your team, then that is on the Browns front office. So I would implore them to do the right thing and just trade Duke Johnson, wipe their hands of the situation, and look for a different backup running back who is going to be happy with the role and who is more dependable than a guy who doesn't want to be there. But that's all I got to say in this video. What do you think about Duke Johnson hiring Drew Rosenhaus? Do you think this is a situation that's going to get ugly? Do you want the Browns to hold on to him because of Kareem Hunt insurance? Or do you want the Browns to just get rid of him because you're tired of the story entirely? Let me know in the comment section down below. And if you like this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and ding that notification bell so you can be notified when I upload, and I upload 3 times a week. And also, if you have a buck or two to spare, please consider joining the Patreon and having your name added to this nice little bar at the bottom of the video. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day and have a great night.